Well, Jay and Dave's Sports Bar is back for week 2. Kicked off a fun visual side of this thing on YouTube. Hope that some of you had the chance to catch it, but we also have the audio version. So just trying to provide more options as we continue with, again, Jay and Dave's Sports Bar, the new title, formerly known as the 208. Close there, buddy. Close there.
Adjusting to getting back to things.
Welcome back, man.
This has been fun. I've always talked about like when we were in a slight hiatus, all the people that would come up to me and be like, oh, what happened? Where'd the podcast go? In the last week, I've had a bunch of people who were like, I'm really glad it's back. I've had people who watched it and didn't necessarily listen to it.
That was a surprising thing for me. A few people at the Boise State Marshall game, that's exactly what they said. And I kind of like stopped them for a second. I was like, wait, so did you really watch it or did you listen to it? And they're like, no, we watched it.
Right.
And so that was kind of a cool thing, I think.
Yeah, people were like, oh, I didn't know you looked that terrible. And then I was like, oh man. So this is the last time we're gonna do the video.
Faces for radio.
No, I mean, it's been really cool getting back, get back in the groove of it with you and having things to talk about. There's no shortage of it.
Nope.
So everything's worked out very timely.
It is kind of funny though. I would like to say that we were the most popular part of the podcast, but it was actually our sweet logo that Shane Woodland designed for us. Everybody loved it, and I had more than enough people reach out and say, hey, can we get shirts? Made.
Yeah, I saw someone put our buddy Dan Goodale on notice that maybe he needs to.
And then Dan volunteered, hey, you need shirts.
Yeah.
You know where to come.
He said they were $45 a piece though, which I was like, what?
Oh my goodness.
It was made out of cashmere.
That's a cool logo, but yes, actually we only print shirts in cashmere. That and satin.
This was always kind of like, the podcast was kind of like a 3-man show. It was me, you, and Shanti, the producer, but now I guess Shane has to be part of it just because of all that.
A logo that cool.
Not for him. But yeah, no, it's wonderful being back. We're back in the groove of it. That last one felt like the return. There's all the hype to it. Well, now this is game 2 for us. So
hopefully we are more entertaining, I will say, than game 2 of Boise State's regular season. Game 1,
I'm glad you mentioned it.
It was all over the place. Boise State rallied. They obviously made that ferocious comeback at the end to knock off Florida State. And then game 2, home on the blue season, home opener against Marshall. These were two teams that we touted as having really explosive offenses last week. In fact, they were two of the most explosive offenses in the country going into that game. And it ended in less than 3 hours, and there are 21 total points scored in the contest.
It was, I remember last week we talked about how great the podcast was, because it's like, there's stuff you couldn't always fit in a newscast or fit in a story that we wanted to talk about. Now we're like, yeah, there were 21 points. Well, see you later.
We looked up at the scoreboard. Okay, there was like 3 minutes to go in the first half. So or 3 minutes to go in the second quarter.
Yeah.
And we were an hour and 7 minutes in. It was the exact opposite of the Florida State game when it took over 4 hours to play that thing.
You know, as someone that works in sports media, the time that you do that, the exact moment you do that is when the game slows down. You're like, well, it sure is going quick. Something's going to happen. And it didn't in that game.
It didn't.
But we looked it up. And at least in the game books, it said that Florida State game was 4 hours on the dot, and this one was 2:59.
Which it felt like the Florida State game was 6 days, and it felt like we were done in a half hour.
Yeah, it really
Marshall.
did. It really did. And then like afterward, it's like, well, what do I write about? But they won, and that was good. And I think Marshall's gonna be a good team, and kind of like in a weird way. And I said this before.
Yeah.
It reminded me of when Troy came here. Troy was a good team. I don't think they don't have the name recognition. And some people are like, well, I'm not gonna
see beyond that, right?
I'm not gonna go out and get excited to go see Marshall or Troy. That was a close game. It was what, 19-8 or whatever?
That was 19-8 was Oregon.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why the number
was it
popped
19-14?
out.
What was that?
I think it was 24-13.
Okay.
Something in that range.
I don't know.
So I want to say they covered it like the last second.
It wasn't
barely.
that long ago.
Yeah.
That was the Avery Williams punt return game. But anyways, it wasn't that high scoring. Didn't win by that much. And so this just reminded me of that. Like, I think Marshall's going to be fine.
I think Marshall's going to be a good club. But
yeah, and someone did comment on my story. It was like, you didn't give enough credit to Marshall in the story. Well, I write from a Boise State perspective, so I'm not trying to write an AP story where I do 50-50. But yeah, I mean, Marshall was good. I think Boise State clearly had more opportunities to turn that into a more than a 7-point game. And I think that was part of the story. And Brian Harsin even said it. He's like, I'm not sure if it's what Marshall did or us not doing well, is what he said. And then you look, what we talked about this week, sure sounds like they didn't do what they should have. So, but anyway, yes. Shouts to the Thundering Herd. Their equipment people were super nice. Their whole operation was really nice.
Yeah.
And I think Boise State fans for their own sake, but also just for opponent's sake, because they're going to play their next year's. Hope they do well this season.
Yeah. They even had like a funny travel to get here. They had to stop in Oklahoma.
Omaha.
Right?
I thought it was Omaha.
Okay. And it's because they had to bring a bunch of their gear on their plane with them. So the plane weighed more than it usually does when they travel. And they had a short week too, so they maybe just couldn't drive everything out like they normally can. But kind of weighed everything down. So they actually had to stop about halfway here, fuel up again, and then continue on to Boise, Idaho.
I made a crack about it because I saw that equipment truck, and that they had any like game worn Randy Moss jerseys in the back. When I was in high school, I was watching the 1AA championship game, '96. So that was his first season there, and I was like, oh my God, that guy's insane, right? This guy's awesome. So I went home. Or I was at home and I went to what is called the internet back then, right?
No, it was internet or Prodigy.
It was AOL probably. Yeah, it probably was AOL. Welcome. Yeah, but I went on there and I found like 6 pictures of Randy Moss, printed them out black and white, of course, because it didn't have a color printer there. And come on. And I made a little collage. And I put it up in my locker. And I was like, this guy is awesome. Had a great year in '97. And then he goes to my hometown Vikings. And I just remember being like telling all the people at school, like, that guy in my locker, that's him. And there's like, what? And I'm like, you haven't been paying attention. Yeah. That's when I truly knew. I was like, oh my God, I'm a hipster with music and now with sports. I'm insufferable.
I remember that. But the thing about Randy, too, is he slipped in that draft.
He did.
As you started off the story, I thought you were just going to say you really liked Randy, and then I wasn't even thinking that you were going to say that he went to your hometown team.
He did.
Because he did.
Right. He wore number 18
One
for
of my
a little
favorite
bit.
30 for 30s, though. Randu.
The Randu? Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome 30 for 30.
Yeah. And Jason Williams was in that one a little bit, right?
Yep.
I can't believe they both went to Marshall. He transferred to Florida, but still.
Right.
Unbelievable. So I always have a soft spot for Marshall. So for what it's worth, if anybody didn't think I didn't give them enough credit, you didn't know me when I was 14, man.
I'm excited to go there next year because I counted it up after the season opener. I think it's 19 or 20 states that I've had the chance to watch the Boise State football team play.
Yeah.
And I've yet to knock off West Virginia.
Yeah, likewise. So I think I'm like 2 states ahead of you just because of how long I've been around, but not many more than you. So I've never even been to that state.
Yeah.
So I think
we're close, Virginia.
But
now we're going to West Virginia.
Just go west and
just go west and they run into it. I think that the thing about the Marshall game is you walked away from it with just like the weirdest feeling. And I think the reason for that is when a team scores points and you complete a bunch of passes and you rush for a bunch of yards, we just all pick up these, our game books and it's like, look at all these tangible stats we can look at. I'm as guilty of it as anybody.
What?
I know. But when you have like the defense do it and the offense is just kind of okay, you kind of walk out scratching your head like, how do we interpret what we just saw?
Yes.
I do think that fans should be encouraged by it. Not only because, like you said, that Marshall's going to go on to be a good team, but because this defense, the second half effort of this defense, one of the most dominant halves that I've ever watched of a Boise State football team.
Me too. We were up in the box kind of wondering like what has been better in our time. And then, of course, like the really quick answer, which was the correct answer, was the Poinsettia was a better half.
Yeah.
They gave like -3 yards in that one, which it wasn't that long ago. But in terms of like a regular season game and all that stuff, it was way up there, man. I mean, you're used to still, even though it hasn't been that way for a couple of years now, Boise State winning at home like 59-10, right?
Yeah.
That's not necessarily the case anymore. They're playing better teams. And so like I think people walk out of that game going like, I don't know if they're that good.
Yeah.
Well, again, they're still winning, and they're not winning the same way they used to. And so I think that's an adjustment for some people. That doesn't necessarily mean they're worse. I mean, maybe the offense isn't quite as high octane as it used to be, but
Dave, I know that
Marshall defense is good. Whatever.
Marshall's defense is good, and we talked with Jim Mora, former NFL coach, former UCLA coach. That was one thing that he said about that Marshall team. He's like, you're going to notice that they're not like the biggest, but they will play tough, eat down in and down out. And I think that he kind of hit the nail on the head right there. He also told us a story about how Hank used to wear blazers to UCLA games when he was being recruited. Every other recruit, it's usually the day after they play a high school football game on a Friday, so they go to these games at UCLA on Saturday, and most of them are still kind of wearing athletic gear and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Hank shows up in a blazer. So he immediately stood out from the get-go there, just showing that he's kind of unique. I asked Jim, and the way that I phrased the question, I said, Jim, everybody says that Hank is weird. Like everybody we talk to, they say that he's weird. And he goes, And so then he told me that story and about how he was always paying attention and always like making eye contact and asking great questions. And he goes, I don't know if I'd call him weird, but I'd definitely call him unique.
Yeah, that's a good word.
I bet you that's even what his teammates mean when they call him weird. But weird's a little more fun than unique.
But if you think about it, I mean, legitimately, you have 105 guys in that locker room.
Yeah.
All about one thing, the team.
Yeah.
Usually dress the same. Usually try to be very business-like and all that stuff and have the same attitude. So even if a guy does something like that, it's weird. Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that guy's wacky. Even like Curtis Weaver, like, oh, man, he's so silly. And it's
why?
Like,
he laughs.
Yeah. He smiles. And you're like,
smiles.
what? It's like,
he dances to old school Michael Jackson during practice.
So like today, right?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so he's a little different, but it's not like he's out, he's not out there.
He's not wearing like MC Hammer pants to practice.
I was just like jean shorts, like shorts or something like that, right?
But I think you do go back and you look at this Marshall game, and for me, I am not hitting the panic button on only scoring 14 points, and I actually think there's reason to believe that the glass is definitely half full versus half empty. If you look at Boise State's production, I mean, it all comes down to the red zone, really, Dave.
Yes.
And Boise State hasn't been that great inside the red zone.
Yeah, inside the red zone, or even like Harsin said inside the 25, which isn't your classic definition of the red zone. That's the 20.
I bet you that even the definition of the red zone has kind of changed over time because. I think when the red zone was established, kicking was different. Like now 45, 50 yarders are more routine. So I don't know. I bet you if you really do look at it, they probably would bump the red zone back out a couple of yards.
Someone probably will correct me on that, but I think my buddy at CU, Dave Platty, the SID, he invented the red zone term.
Really?
I swear. I'm 99% sure. So there's a little history fact for you. But they...
Humble brag.
Yeah, but you're right. But I mean, also like now though, it is a little different because at the 25 it's a 42-yarder. And that's a little more automatic than it used to be. It's still college kickers, right? But I think even like inside in this Marshall game, they got inside the 35 like 4 times and didn't get any points out of it.
Yeah.
So even if it wasn't your classic red zone, they were in scoring position a couple times and just couldn't score, and that's what I meant by it. It felt like they could have won by more. And usually these things, when we talk about the stats and stuff like that, a lot of times they even out. If there's one, if you have talent and there's one extreme, they usually kind of bump it back up to the median. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be stunned next 2 games if it's like, oh, they're pretty good in the red zone. And you look at the stats by the time they get into October, and then they're fine. You know what I mean? Usually that's kind of the case, and I would absolutely think that's the case.
Yeah.
Saying hi to my buddy Joey who walked by. So.
Nice. When we asked him to kind of evaluate like percentages and stuff inside the red zone, it's always the same, but you want to score about 90% of the time you're down inside the red zone, and then you want to score touchdowns about 75% of the time you're down inside the red zone. Now those, I was kind of like looking those up. Those are actually pretty elite numbers, Dave. Like if you're doing that, the last time Boise State did that was Harsin's first year, and that was arguably his best year here. They also had Jay Ajayi down inside the red zone, which he was nearly automatic down there. But they scored over 90% of the time, and they scored a touchdown over 70% of the time.
Now, it's probably a good tight end year. I'm just assuming.
Jake Crow was pretty good that
probably,
year. Yeah. Outside of that, they've always kind of been like an 80-60 team, so right around there.
Yeah.
So those numbers that he gave us, I think those are elite numbers. I really do think like more like 80-60 is what you want. But right now, the scoring is close. It's 9 of 12, which is 75%, but it's the touchdown percentage that's one of the worst in the country right now.
Is it 4 to 12?
33.3%. So I mean that's one area that is a concern. And here's the reason why I go back to the glass half full analogy, because Dave, you wrote about this week, and I know that we've kind of talked about it this week. 2 of the most important positions on the entire team right now are being I mean, in terms of snaps, they're being owned by true freshmen. Hank Bachmeier at quarterback, and now George Holani at running back. You can't expect those guys to go out there and be a hundo when they were playing in high school at this time last year.
Right.
I mean, 9 months ago, they were finishing up their high school football careers. There's obviously going to be an adjustment.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think that's, one of those things with Bachmeier, as much as his first game was great, it's pretty evident that there are avenues in which he can get better. He's not going to throw for 500 yards a game.
No.
But there are aspects like that where you're like, well, he's probably going to get better. There has to be some way where a true freshman quarterback is going to get better.
Yeah.
He's not going to immediately be at an A and then just stay there. There's going to be some way where he gets better. Kellen Moore threw a couple picks his redshirt freshman year. You know what I mean?
He was
double digits,
25 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, or something like that as a freshman. Right. A redshirt freshman.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so far Bachmeier's thrown 2 picks, and so he's on pace to probably throw about 11. And there are ways to get better, and I think he will, of course. But he's obviously off to a great start. But the Holani thing, it was interesting this week. Lee Marks, I wrote about it in the preseason. The word that scares people, especially if you play fantasy, is the C word, is committee. And Lee said back then he'd be fine with it, and so far you can see it. I mean, like, Mahone ran great against Florida State. So did Holani. Mahone gets dinged up a little bit with the shoulder. Should be back this week. Holani, great game. It shows right there that there's a reason that they kind of were going into this going like, we like using 3 guys.
Yeah.
Because they're all capable.
Well, and for me too, you look at the size of Andrew Van Buren, and he's had a tough time holding on to the rock so far this year and really making the most of his opportunities. And, I think those guys were put on alert prior to the season started. Like, as you said, Dave, they got 3 guys they really like. You better go out and make the most of every opportunity. If you do, you're going to earn more. If you don't, you're probably going to lose a couple carries to the next guy.
Yep.
And you want to talk about a presence down inside the red zone, I think Andrew Van Buren can be that guy in short yardage situations. I mean, he's 223 pounds with 12% body fat. I mean, he's a big physical dude, but he hasn't been able to probably it kind of sounds, stern or whatever, but he hasn't been able to hold on to the rock. And you can't risk turning the ball over anywhere, let alone when you're on the 2-yard line ready to punch this thing in.
It's not.
And he coughed one up again. Yeah. Now, Boise State was able to retain it or recover it, but he still coughed up the rock, and you just can't do that.
He's had 10 carries, and he's fumbled twice.
Yeah.
That's not a good percentage.
Not a good ratio.
And they're still going to give him the ball. He's still going to get his opportunities.
I really think a lot of Van Buren, man. I think that when it comes to, like, the size you want out of your running back, I mean, he's very similar to what J.J. was when he was here. In terms of size, I'm not talking about talent at the moment because that's unfair to compare anybody to J.J.'s junior year at Boise State. But, yeah, I think that he could definitely offer something in terms of helping some red zone efficiency. And Brian mentioned
when he fumbled.
Yep. Brian mentioned this week, though, when it comes to scoring, they're going to not only evaluate scheme and personnel and players and play calling and however other way you can phrase it, but they're also going to, in terms of players, they're going to try to get the ball to. They're going to rethink that.
Yeah, and that was, he wasn't specific on that.
No,
but I'm glad
I wouldn't expect him to be.
I'm glad you mentioned that because we talked to Kent Riddle today, and we talked a little bit about the tight ends. We'll be talking to John and Garrett this Thursday, but. That of course stands out to you about who gets the ball in the red zone situations. The tight ends haven't yet, but the tight ends have done a nice job so far this year. And it's the eternal question, and Brian Harsin was well aware of it, joked about it, and when I started asking that to Kent Riddle, you should have seen his face. He kind of started chuckling too.
Yeah.
When their tight end's going to get the ball and all that stuff, and they have. And I would imagine you might see a little bit of that.
I think that from the very first podcast, ever since we've been doing Jay and Dave's Sports Bar, the entire podcast that we've been around, we've kind of been Team Khalil Shakir, right?
Yes.
I'm kidding. We've been doing it since our previous podcast. We've been hyping him up and trying to warn you guys about how good he is for a while now.
Since last week, we've been like, you're pretty good.
Yeah. It goes back long, much further than that. I'm also Team John Bates now.
Oh,
I'm committed to it, Dave.
That was my shtick. Was that I was the conductor on the John Bates Hype Express.
You have been for a while.
I took some, I took some guff for it from other media types. And then this year I didn't do it as much. And then there he goes, and he like led the team in receiving, or obviously tied with catches.
5 for 63 against Marshall.
Yeah.
Back-to-back games, he's established new career highs as a pass catcher.
Yeah. So there you go. The time when I don't publicize it, that's when he does it.
Yeah,
I think he knows. I think he knows that.
He's impressive, though. I hope he knows, Dave, so you get your credit.
Yeah, I'll ask him tomorrow.
He's impressive, man. And I think when you look at his size, he's a dude.
He's a dude, and he's an athlete, man.
Yeah.
What he did at Lebanon High School, it's not Lebanon, but what he did there, like being like a track guy and being like an all-state type guy, being a basketball player, being a football player, like it was like, all right, they don't usually get guys like that. Dudes who are like 6'6" who can do all that stuff. Yeah. Obviously, had been committed to a Pac-12 school in Oregon State too, nearby, and so it's like, he was obviously a huge get for them.
Yeah.
And once that rawness was gone, you're starting to see kind of the fruits of it.
Well, and not only is the jump from high school to college difficult, but lower level high school to college is even more extreme. But John also did a lot of was kind of used more as as a pass catcher than he was like a real tight end in high school. And so it wasn't a position switch for him, but I would assume there was a definite reality check of, man, we're on the line now. We're spending a lot of time with our hand in the ground and blocking. And now you hear coaches talk about his mentality is awesome.
Yeah.
He's physical. He's stronger than he's ever been. He is as tough as he's ever been, and it just really starts to feel like he's coming into his own. And another thing is that he's earning more opportunities. Kent Riddle raves about this guy as a run blocker.
Yeah.
Point of attack. He's like, it's more of a when you consider the receiving game. We got catches and targets and receiving yards and yak yards and touchdowns and all this stuff to justify how a player is doing. But when it really comes to run blocking, I mean, you can get into ratings on whatever it is, Pro Football Focus and other things like that. But for the average fan, it's really hard to really come to terms with, oh yeah, he's a really good run blocker because he wins his run blocking assignment 82% of the time.
Right.
Is that even good? I don't know.
Right.
Do you want to win at 100?
You would think 100 would be good. Right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But Kent Riddle said more often than not, he's the guy that setting the edge and winning his battle, and at the point of attack, he's the aggressor in this ground game. And so it was cool to see that. But it's also earning him more opportunities as a pass catcher. All of last year, kid only got 13 targets. This year he's already at 10. So you can see that there is a desire to get that 6'6" frame, and when it's stretched out over 7 feet involved. And when he's running that seam route, man, Hank can just kind of put it up there, and Bates is a guy that can just go get it because of his frame.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like we hadn't really seen that much, last season, especially.
A couple of the catches that he's made 2 now. He made one against Florida State and another one where he's stretched out against Marshall. I don't remember seeing that very often last year at all.
And then Collingham had one against Florida State too. That was very similar. And so
Marshall, right?
Against Marshall? 23-yarder-ish. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Maybe.
Whatever.
Yeah. But either way, seeing the tight ends kind of, take advantage in that part of the vertically a little bit has been interesting. And I mentioned that to Riddle, and he's like, "Well, they've been doing good on the other ones." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but we didn't see as much as that vertical aspect with them as last year." And so, might I be writing about this week? Probably. They have some inspiration for that. They do, from another school. But yeah, I mean, seeing those guys get involved has been interesting. And your guy Mora, whose dad was the one that said playoffs, it wasn't him. He said during the broadcast that for a young quarterback, his best friend would be a big pass catching tight end. And we haven't talked to Bachmeier, so who knows? Yeah. But having that as another outlet can only be helpful.
Yeah. I think another thing that's helpful is these wide receivers have been really good after the catch this year, and especially a guy like Khalil. I just remember a couple of years ago, I mean, Cedric Wilson was always very explosive after the catch, but it really did seem like at times that the ball would kind of stick after the catch. And now it's, these guys are pretty dynamic, explosive. we finally got to see John Hightower stick a foot in the ground, get north, and I don't even know if he hit top speed, in all honesty, Dave, but it was like just that initial burst to like turn and go, and you're like, he was gone, like that.
He wasn't quite straight line for most of it.
Yeah, but it was just, you could see, I think Killian Butler described it as, what's it like to see John Hightower get going? He's like, like when you're in a car and you just slam the pedal on the floor? It's like that.
Yeah. It's like John hopped in his little yellow race car and just went to the end zone, right?
And he has a yellow race car.
He does. Jay and I have
Camaro.
Couple times.
He starts that thing, you get to hear it from KTVB, and he's over at Albertson Stadium probably.
We'll just stand there with each other and just kind of watch that thing roll up Broadway. But, I mean, again, you want to talk about the versatility of that group. C.T. Thomas didn't even play.
Yep. That's another thing, too, when we talk about, like, 14 points, still moved the ball great between the 20s, struggled inside the red zone, didn't have, at the time, your leading receiver. I mean, CT had 100 yards in the season openers.
And you got to.
I'm not making excuses, but I'm just saying, like, there are reasons to think, give it a moment.
Yeah, left guard making his first start.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be this. And there are certain people who just think, hey, they have to be at 100 every game. And if those are your expectations, I would be afraid to live in your house. but they're still winning, and I think that's important. And it's it's the middle of September.
Yeah.
I think it would. I don't know if it'd be worse if they were like last year when they went and housed Connecticut in the second game. People are like, what's this offense? And then they hit a lull, and people are like, what happened? It's just like there's almost no perfect thing unless I don't know if you score 49. I don't know.
Yeah. I really feel like this offense is on the rise versus then flatlining or even going down.
I don't know how you could say it wouldn't, because the true freshman, you know what I mean? That aspect.
Well, and we talked about this too prior to the season, Dave, and you always have to discuss injuries and like where you could not really afford to sustain an injury. And I think that it goes Curtis Weaver. At the time for me, it was Avery Williams, just because they're not super deep at corner.
I'd agree with that.
And Avery by far has the most snaps and experience. And then behind that, you're probably starting to look at the offensive line. You loved the 5, but everything behind the 5 is fairly unproven.
Right.
And so, now you got Molchon playing right tackle, and you got Stets playing left guard for the first time. And so it didn't click like it probably did, in the second half of Florida State. So
sure, yeah. I think that's fair, because Hank was still getting hit, but they had to make a change at the O-line, and any of that shuffling on the O-line is going to cause a little bit of that. There's not exactly that continuity, So, So I mean, that's another part that didn't necessarily stun me.
Yeah. Over on the other side of the ball, though, I did mention a couple defensive players' names right there. It was crazy that they were only on the field for 14 plays in the second half.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a second half like that, where your defense, I mean, that's about the minimum. That really is about the minimum you can be on a field for a second half. Unless you're Air Force and you can take, maybe a possession or two out of it because you run the ball a lot. Outside of that,
if you get a pick on the first play and then your offense runs a 12-play drive or whatever.
Maybe, but they had 5 possessions, 4 3-and-outs, and a pick after 2 plays. I mean, that's about the least you could possibly be on a field for a half.
I did laugh when Weaver talked about that today. He's like, you don't have to make me feel tired. And then Schmedding tells you how many snaps you've played, and you don't really have any right to feel that tired or something like that. You know what I mean? Because it was like, you were in for 14 plays. And it's like,
okay, the thing that is comical to me, though, is sometimes I go back, I kind of chart games just because I am weird and I like to know certain numbers. But at the moment Harsin said it, and he was kind of joking around after his press conference. But the fact that the offense was there, they had to chart plays and stuff so much longer than the defensive guys did this week, because
that's right.
The defensive players are barely on the field, and that kind of resonated with me, just because like sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, how many plays did Boise State run today? I'm like, oh crap, 89? This is going to take forever to get through. Or I'll go home and I'll be like, 62, I'll get through this kind of quick. But the defensive guys had to be loving it, because they've been on the field 105 times this entire year.
Yeah, and the offense ran 108 against Florida State. So they've
good perspective, Dave. Offense on the field, 108 plays against Florida State. This entire year, the defense has only been on the field for 105 plays.
Yeah,
great
crazy?
Perspective. Yeah.
And Harsin mentioned, like, the defensive staff got done early.
Yeah.
And he kind of imitated, like, with the offensive guys, he kind of made it seem like they were just like trying to stay awake and stuff, trying to get through it. So that was a pretty good visual. And I mean, probably will sort of continue this week. I don't know. Portland State seems okay, but
they seem okay. But this is the game that I think you really want to try to open everything up. Maybe you can try a new guy at a position or two if you want.
You can say it. You can say Riley Smith.
Yeah, we'll see. A guy like Riley Smith. Maybe he gets in there a few more plays, and
that's why
he is. One thing I'll say about Riley, and we got to see this like in the fall scrimmage and stuff, just when he's out there practicing and warming up. He looks very athletic for a quarterback.
Yeah,
and I don't mean like, like a scrambling quarterback, but I mean like a guy that. Quarterbacks are like pitchers in baseball, like, oh, yeah, I can hit, and then you see him swing, and it's like, your swing sucks, guy, okay? But he goes out and he, like, runs routes, and you see his hands, that like looks like he's got soft hands. I mean, if you told me he was a tight end, I would believe
it. If you see his like, high school highlights, like, on Huddle, one of the first couple plays is, like, a 65-yard touchdown run he has. And on it, you're like, oh, my God. But you look at his stats, and he ran a decent amount at his high school. But Joey Gatewood, who he's shared time with, who's now the backup at Auburn, he was more of the runner. So I think that kind of overshadowed the fact that Smith had some athleticism to him, too. And, boy, the way the coaches are talking, I would not expect him to be a quarterback in the future.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just based on the way that they talk about him.
Not only about him,
Kent Riddle seemed amped about the opportunity. He's like, oh, I'd love it if he was a tight end. You're like, well, okay.
Look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
You're starting a true freshman at quarterback.
Technically.
And something would have...
Him and Hank would be the same. They're freshmen.
Exactly.
Even though he redshirted. But
something would have to go drastically wrong. I mean, at this point, that's what would have to happen for Riley Smith to play quarterback. It is what it is. Like, something would have to go bad.
Yeah. This year, I kept thinking, like, oh, maybe Garrett Collingham will throw a pass. Now, but now I'm like, well, maybe you might want to have it. You might want to have your Riley Smith if you're going to do it, right?
You could probably do some fun stuff.
But I mean, like, you kind of mentioned, like, opening it up and stuff like that, and it was timely when I wrote the thing about the true freshman because, with the redshirt rule, this is an opportunity, in my opinion, that maybe toward the end of the game or whatever, you can get some of those guys in that you're still planning on redshirting because the score.
This might be that game.
Might be that game, and so I think that's part of the interest that one would have in a game like this, even if it's not, it's the least exciting one on the roster, or on the schedule, is just because of those opportunities. I think, and so that's what will make this game intriguing, in my opinion, is what they might do because they have a little bit of freedom. I think.
And I guess if you talk about that, Dave, like, you don't want to just use a kid for one play so you lose that one game. I mean, technically with the new redshirt rule, you could if you wanted.
Right.
But this is a chance where if you get up, you take care of business, you finish drives, you get up by a few touchdowns, and you can't let these kids play for maybe half a quarter or something like that. I think that would be the best case scenario. Not put the cart before the horse.
Right.
I mean, they got to go out and finish the drives. That's absolutely what they have to do.
That's when my guy Jarvis Hodge used to shine. You probably weren't even here when Jarvis Hodge was here.
I wasn't.
Running back that would come in like the fourth quarter and like average like 6 yards a carry. People were like, why isn't he in more? So you got Doug and you got DJ and you got those other guys from Jeremy Avery.
Come on, get Jarvis some touches.
Maybe it's Danny Smith this time. I don't know. But I mean, like, I am a little intrigued in this game just for those reasons. I mean, I don't think it's going to be the fact they're playing an FCS, right? And if you look at the game notes, it's kind of funny. They're like, oh, only 7 schools have played fewer FCS teams since 2015, or like, so it was something like that, right? But do you like that they're playing an FCS? Do you not mind it? Do you think it's bad? Because I think when people look at the schedule this year, you get 2 non-con home games, and that's one of them. People aren't very amped about that.
Yeah, one thing I will say, and this. It'll probably be a popular opinion in Boise, but for some of our Vandal fans that might tune into this podcast,
I was wondering if we were going to go there when I brought this question up.
I'm sorry. Like, I've been a guy that's like, if you're going to schedule an FCS school, schedule Idaho. Like, I have said that time and time again. But
shouldn't schedule any.
I don't know if you should schedule Idaho right now. And the only reason why I say that is because, they barely squeaked by Central Washington. They lost 79-7 against Penn State.
Yeah.
I don't think that they need that right now. Like, I don't. I don't think that they need to subject the program to that right now. I don't. Like, I'm just being honest.
I think I get where you're coming from.
Like, maybe in a couple of years, figure out the Big Sky and your scholarship situation and even everything out again and get competitive there. And then maybe, later on down the line, they can, re-explore something like that. If they're going to schedule an FCS school, it should be Idaho. But
they should.
I don't know. I don't know if you get better, but I'm whatever. I'm sorry. I'm going with it. I don't know if you get better by playing Idaho right now.
Fair. So Boise State and BYU announced the continuation of their series, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
To go 10 years from 25 to 34. Mm-hmm. They won't play in 24. But other than that, they're playing every year until 2034, which I think I'll be alive. Can't guarantee it.
Dave, we'll be... I think you will. Can I say it? You will be 50. I'll almost.
I will.
Be 50.
I will. Yes, I will. But I think would be hilarious is like one of those years when they're playing BYU at home, also schedule Idaho at home, and for the people that have certain issues with scheduling, that they that. I love this place.
Yeah, right. It's amazing, right?
That the scheduling would be, people like, oh, I don't want them, having BYU on the schedule because it reinforces them being independent. Just as much as if they played Idaho that same year.
Yeah.
Like, we shouldn't be playing them. They're FCS. Those two things would be hilarious, in my opinion.
Yeah. You fan of the? Rephrase that. Do you like the BYU Boise State rivalry continuing?
I do.
I
personally do, just because it gets people amped up.
It does, man.
And they're not where they used to be. Granted, but they went and won at Tennessee, and we can dog on Tennessee all we want.
Yeah.
But guess what? People are dogging on Florida State, man.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
The one thing about
people
BYU,
are like, well, no, Florida State's different. No, it's not.
The one thing about BYU too is that you always give yourself a chance to have that team on your schedule. And what I mean by that is BYU always has kind of a ridiculous schedule. They always schedule really well.
Oh God, yeah.
And so there's always that
this
chance.
Year's insane.
Yeah, it was that way last year though too. There's always that chance, and I know it hasn't been the case lately. But there's always that chance. What if Zach Wilson, when he's a senior and they really start to figure things out and they have a schedule like they did this year and they knock off a couple ACC schools or a SEC school and then they play Boise State, then all of a sudden Boise State's got this great chance to get this awesome quality win. And so what I'm saying is there's a regional team that there is somewhat of a rivalry feeling with, and there's that good competitive opportunity for this Boise State football team. So I think it's great. And another thing, it's so funny because I think on Twitter sometimes you see people be like, is it a rivalry because BYU's only won 2 out of 7 or something like that? If you're a part of this rivalry and you're a fan, absolutely make that argument. But for me, why it's a rivalry is because whenever you tweet about it, it's like you're stirring the pot.
Yep.
You could be tweeting out a fact about it that's 100% true, and somebody's going to be like, oh, well, this is about BYU's dumb or whatever. Something's going to happen.
One of my favorite tweet responses to that is, who cares?
Yeah.
You took the time to type that in response to me, so clearly someone does.
Care. Yeah. So that, come on, that's a rivalry.
And I agree. And also, like, at the moment, if you look like way in the future, they have some open dates. But if you look at past this season, in terms of like being able to host Power Fives, some years they're playing 2 of them. So Boise State's still scheduling those teams. I'm positive they're still trying to schedule more of those out to like 2034. They're not there yet. But if they can't schedule those and like BYU is the marquee game on the schedule, then you got an issue. But if you can have that along with a P5 on there, maybe 2, whatever, that's about as good as you can you usually hope for a team in the Mountain West Conference.
Yeah, especially with the rotating divisional schedule too. It's about the best you can hope for. Another thing, you bring up attendance. Usually people show up to watch the BYU Boise State game.
Yeah, I saw your tweet about the attendance.
Yeah, 2 of the top 3 attendances in Albertson Stadium history have been Boise State, BYU.
Yeah.
They've played this game 4 times since 2012, which was kind of like the return of the rivalry or whatever. But those 4 attendances all rank inside the top 19 in program history. So usually when they schedule BYU, fans show up.
And they're close games.
And they're close games. 3 of them have been decided by a single point. 1 point. And that doesn't include last year where
it was 5, but they were down inside the 5-yard line.
Yeah, I mean, that was an awesome ending to a great college football game.
And that stuff makes me just think that, like, there's no one else that makes sense for that. You know, Oregon and Washington, and hell, you want to throw Colorado or Washington State or any of those teams. They're not going to have a 10-year series with Boise State. They might do a home and home with Oregon. It's a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be able to build that sort of thing with anybody else. Honestly, there's nobody else that can do it with.
I haven't looked at it that way, but you're right. You're not going to call up Oregon State or Washington State or any of them and be like, want to do 10 years? And it's like, yeah, let's play in 2018 and then we'll do it again in 2028.
Like, yeah, we'll take 9.
Not twice in 10 years. I mean, for 10 years straight.
We'll take 9 up here and 1 down there.
You're right, Dave. It's not going to happen. So,
actually, can I mention off that token real quick?
Yeah.
We're talking about this P5 thing. Mountain West, not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad against those Power 5s.
Yeah. Rocky Long and his
infinite wisdom.
Yeah, I was going to go old man snarky remarks, but we're going to go infinite wisdom for his sake, especially because Rocky's probably watching, listening, recording our podcast, playing it back, all that fun stuff. But yeah, I think that the Mountain West, I mean, they got an opportunity to do some things this year. There's been a long time, the last few years, they haven't been good out of conference, all this stuff. But right now, if they got a team that can make a run, a Fresno State, a Boise State, a San Diego State, any of these teams that can make a run, at the end of the year, they're going to be able to have a significant argument being like, well, we took care of business against Power 5 schools.
Right.
You can't hold that over our heads.
Actually, what's kind of funny is I don't think Fresno State does.
Have a shot?
They lost both.
I know. I said
and they
that,
both,
and
and they had great shots
to win both.
That being said, people won't factor that in, but they had great chances to win both of those.
Yeah.
Well, the Minnesota one for sure. But
they had somewhat of a shot in their season opener too against SC.
I wrote about it. God, I think it was in January. It's in the Statesman when I wrote about when the schedule kind of came out, and I mentioned that I was like, in the first 3 weeks, the Mountain West had some big opportunities to kind of turn that tide, because for a while their non-conference record against those Power 5 schools was awful. Like not even like, well, that's normal for a conference. No, it was bad, and so these games all seemed like they were winnable opportunities. You know, like Wake and Missouri and Florida State and those ones all were good wins that they could get them, but they weren't like daunting tasks. You know what I mean? Yeah. They were winnable games.
I'd say at SC for Fresno would have been a really, really probably the best of the bunch if they could have pulled it off. But,
probably.
But if they beat them too, you're also saying
Nevada beating Oregon would have.
That was a crazy game. Early, like, what? I think there's like 8 minutes to go in the second. It's a 1-point game, 7-6. Yeah. And then Oregon scored 70 straight.
Yeah. I saw it. Tyson Alger wrote something in The Athletic about how it's early, but it sure as hell looks like Andy Avalos was a great hire. Yeah. And I was like, yeah.
You think?
No, yeah. You think? No, I mean, everyone here would have told you that. But yeah, I think the Mountain West has, Craig Thompson said it, and he was right. I mean, they had 3 10-win teams last year. Yeah. They were all really good squads, and most of those teams, all 3 of those teams returned a lot of talent. San Diego State did a real nice job against UCLA. Seeing San Diego State so low in rushing is still just creepy to me. Yeah, it's weird.
It is.
They're like, what, 119th or something?
Is it Ryan Agnew though?
Yeah, the quarterback.
He's doing okay.
And they said they're going to run more of like a modern system, more of a spread thing. Which, if you watch it, it's true. But it's still just weird seeing them not even being like 60th in the country. It's like 119th. But
yeah, usually they're up higher than that.
But yeah, I mean, in Wyoming, they to credit, they go beat Missouri. They didn't play great, and they pulled it out, later against Texas State. And when those guys come in here too, that one's going to be a tough one. Yeah. And Hawaii's going to be tough. They've won 2 against Pac-12 teams.
They're 2-0 against Pac-12 teams, both of them out on the island. But this week they travel to Washington to take on the Huskies. By the way, they get back-to-back Pac-12 games.
It's crazy.
Talk about awesome scheduling. Yeah, wow. Yeah. They're 3 touchdown dogs against the Dogs. Dogs with a W. And man, I don't know about that.
Is that Jay's stone cold lead pipe lock of the week?
I don't know if I'm going to go that far. I think there's other ones out there.
Hey, what about Air Force at Colorado? It's like 4.
You see I would want to say that, but that's like such a lock that I'm like, yep, staying away. Yep, the betting people know more than I do about that one.
I can't punch you in the face because we're on video. So.
Yeah.
But there's another one. There's another opportunity.
Yeah,
that's a good opportunity.
You would think that'd be a lot. That is a good opportunity. And on the road only being a 4-point, I mean, you said this earlier to me today, that's basically a pick 'em if it's a neutral field. Like home field's worth 3. So they're basically saying that they're very similar teams in terms of talent and ability. Yeah. But I don't know. 21 points, seeing what Hawaii's been able to do so far, how they can put points on the board. Didn't love Jacob Eason in the season opener against, or in the I guess it wasn't their season opener. It was against Cal in their Pac-12 opener last week. I don't know. I'm not saying Hawaii's going to go win the thing, but I'm saying that I think they keep it closer than 21, so they'll lose by 20.
I like Nick Rolovich posting the Rose Bowl logo after they won.
Did you see that? No.
He just tweeted the Rose Bowl logo. That was it. They're 2-0 in the Pac-12.
Awesome.
I was like, great. God, that guy's something else.
He is something else. You really quick, when we went back to it, you could have gone one direction or the other when we were talking about Power 5 schools and attendance and all that stuff, and you went Power 5. I want to go to attendance for just a second here. My take on attendance is not as hot as a lot of people's. There were 31,000 or so that showed up for the season opener or the home opener at Albertson Stadium last Friday. I think it's tough to compare things to 2012 season ticket sales. And the only reason why I say that, Dave, is because, and I've asked for this number and I haven't gotten it yet, and I hope that I do. But in 2012, when they were selling season tickets, they also didn't have blue collar passes where you can buy 3 home games instead of 6 home games. Right. And so I would have to assume that, if there's 2,000 blue collar passes sold, that's going to take away from your season ticket sales. But it is still kind of like adding a half. It's like a half a sack. So, would you agree with that? I don't know. And I don't know what the blue collar pass number is.
Oh, you're trying to see if that fits, if that counts as season tickets or not.
I'm just saying season tickets have continued to drop. They're what was it, 16.8?
16.8, 50 or 580,
something
whatever.
Like that. Okay, I'm just saying, like, I don't know if they're down as much as people think, because the blue collar pass used to not be available. Right. And so now if people are buying the blue collar pass, it's a reason not to buy season tickets. Right. So you kind of have to, you do have to consider those two numbers, I think, right? No, I don't know.
A little bit. I don't know if they sold that many of those.
Okay.
Just between us girls. I'm just kidding. We're broadcasting this out in the world. I don't know if they sold that many of them.
Okay. World.
But the attendance thing, the season ticket things is a hot topic. Yep. And I think you and I are on the forefront of not shaming people about that.
Yeah.
But the problem is sometimes people just have to say, I just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
Because if there's an excuse, it's like, the schedule. Well, when they were in the WAC, they played crappy teams, but you went. Well, that's because there's more to do now. Oh, okay, gotcha. And you can always talk yourself into 5 different things. The cost of living is more here now. Well, yeah, but
kickoffs are late. Kickoffs are on Fridays.
Yeah, but tickets, the prices haven't gone up that much in the last couple of years.
And here's the deal: when fans do tweet that, and sometimes you say something so much that it's like, I don't need to say it to this person too. If you haven't seen it, then you clearly don't want to see it. Right. But that is a point, and I'm not saying it's cheap to go if you're a family of 4. No. But tickets have not increased that much over the last few years, so that can't be necessarily the excuse.
Sure, and that's what I'm saying. I sometimes people have a hard set. Oh, this is why.
Yeah.
I think it's a little more complicated than that. And do you want to know what I think? Here's my opinion.
Let's do it.
And again,
Dave.
we're not shaming anybody. When I talked to Kurt Apsey about it like 2 years ago, he said it, and I agree. This isn't what he said. This is what I'm saying. They're a top 25 team right now. Mm-hmm. When they were a top 10 team, that's when people were wanting to go. Yeah. Right? Hottest ticket in town. Mm-hmm. That's just it. And I say this in a genuinely not mean way. They're spoiled.
Yeah.
When you have that height, and if that's your expectation, and even if the team's slightly below it, it's still going to be like, well, it's not the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't mean that in a bad way or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And also we talk about the cost of living and stuff. People move in the valley and they're like, well, there's more people that should be going to games.
Yeah.
Oh no, but they don't follow Boise State. Yeah. You can talk yourself into it a million different ways.
Right.
That's what I think it boils down to personally.
Yeah, I agree.
And they're not blasting teams 60-7.
Nope.
Which is funny because also People
used
love
to
people love seeing that, but then
but they also hate it.
right. But they're also like, well, these teams aren't good.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I mean. You can talk yourself. There's always a second side to it, and to me, that's what it boils down to.
At this point, it is what it is for me.
Yeah.
When they announce the attendance on game days at halftime or in the third quarter, or whatever, yep, I'm going to tweet it out.
I'm not. I'm not shaming it.
No, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I'm totally not shaming it.
Yeah,
I get why.
If there's a big game, if there's a big game where you want to sell it out, make a big deal of it.
Yeah.
Outside of that, is what it is.
Yep. Totally agree with you.
How about some of the other teams around the state, really quick, as we wrap up?
Well, you mentioned
the second edition.
You mentioned Idaho.
Yep.
They beat Central Washington. Good.
They did.
It was closer than it should have been.
I honestly don't mean to even.
We're not shaming.
I don't even mean to say it with a smirk, but it. I don't know. I don't know what they do up there. They need to do something differently.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about differently, I don't know. Do they go goofy and just hire someone that runs a crazy offense? Yeah. That's what I mean. Triple option, air raid.
They found this guy out of North Dakota that's at a D2 mining school or whatever school.
There is a South Dakota School of Mines.
Yeah, School of Mines. Okay, but something like that where it's he actually puts two quarterbacks on the field at the same time, and it allows them to just use the entire field.
Remember that goofy A11 offense that they always talked about? Is some high school that would run it where it was everybody was eligible. You hear about that one?
No.
It's called the A11. Look it up. It was 10 years ago. But just I don't know, stuff like that. Maybe that's what they do. I don't know.
Maybe different. Maybe you do something that different. It's all of a sudden there's new energy in the program. Mm-hmm. Something.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was just a tough.
Petrino's getting paid like an FBS coach.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much reason to want to go.
Yeah.
So, until that becomes something.
Yeah.
And Idaho State beat Western.
Mm-hmm.
They beat Western State, and now Idaho State gets to play Utah.
Mm-hmm. You want to talk about attendance?
Who's very good.
Utah's very good. You want to talk about attendance, though? Over in Canyon County, got a text from Coach Morosky this week. They are pushing to break the attendance record at Simplot Stadium. They always have awesome crowds out there. Always awesome crowds. If not sellouts, they always have a very good amount of seats filled at those games. But they're going for 7 or 8K this week.
Ooh. Who are they playing? Of course, I did that to you.
Dang it, Dave. Well, I'm gonna look it up.
And they're ranked really high.
Yeah, they are. But one thing about that is that that's far outside the capacity of Simplot Stadium. But
a lot of people in that beer garden.
That's exactly. And I love I beating a dead horse. I've said this a million times. I love the energy, the atmosphere out there for small college football. It's awesome. Passionate fans that really care.
We just set this thing up.
Yeah.
We can really have our own.
Oh man.
It's called cross promotion. Jay and I will go out there and sling drinks at Simplot someday.
That sounds like a great idea. A bye week or something?
Actually,
maybe not the first bye week.
Not the first.
Colorado plays.
Oh, second bye week.
Second bye week maybe though.
No. Other way around. First bye week would work better.
Okay,
second bye week, I'm going to be going to CU USC.
Okay, so the attendance. So
I might not come in the next week.
The attendance record was set in 2014, so one of the first years, if not the first year back, and it was almost 54,000 and
5,400.
What did I say?
54,000.
No, 5,400.
There are more people at Simplot Stadium than at Doak Campbell.
Yeah, exactly. No, sorry, excuse me. Yes, 5,400. This week, it's actually homecoming. They play Southern Oregon, who usually is pretty good. Yeah, so College of Idaho is off to a 2-0 start this year. Last year, remember, they started 0-5, then ran the table. So now their winning streak's out to 8 games dating back to their winning streak of last year. They really got it rolling out there right now, and I think that they finally have kind of hit that momentum, hit their stride, and they've looked great so far this year.
The howl will be. You're starting to hear it in the distance right now. The howl is going to be roaring pretty soon.
Yeah, it'll be good. But Boise State, a late game Saturday, so we'll get to enjoy a bunch of college football before that game gets kicked off. I like Friday games because you get to just enjoy a bunch of football on Saturday.
Yeah, and Sunday a little bit.
But Saturday, late Saturday, I'm one of the few that's actually okay with it because I get all day Saturday to kind of finish up producing the pregame show with Will, and we get to watch some college football while we do it, while we work. and then we get to watch the Boise State football team and continue to work well past midnight.
And at least you don't have to also have high school football on the same night.
Yeah, I know, that was nuts. Yeah, Friday Night Football is back this Friday. Saturday from 7 to 8 o'clock, and we're actually going to go a little past 8. We're going to try to get you as close to kickoff as we can. The Bronco Roundup Game Day Show live from the Blue. What do you got, Dave?
TheAthletic.com wrote a story that ran this morning on Eric Sachs, the kicker, his crazy journey to Boise State, how unlikely it was. Talked to a couple people for that, including LSU's kicker last year who transferred from a D2 school.
Oh, cool.
Who was in Boise during that Florida State game.
Oh, wow.
He was watching with with relatives, watching Eric, who grew up in the same town where he played for that D2 school.
Yeah.
So there's a good connection there. So I wrote about him, and then I'm going to give a little love to the tight ends this week.
Okay. All right. Well, make sure you go click some buttons on your keyboard or letters and numbers and go on over to The Athletic, read Dave's stuff. Again, the Bronco Roundup Game Day Show live from the Blue from 7 to 8 o'clock. You can watch us on YouTube. Just search Jay and Dave Sports Bar, or you can also obviously catch us the audio version as well. And we're soon going to be up at some of the old locations that we were, but a work in progress. We'll get there. Dave, it's been fun, buddy.
It's been great, my friend.
Boom. All right. We will see you next week on Jay and Dave's Sports Bar, serving the Idaho sports scene.